Yeah. All right, we're ready to go. So thanks for coming, everybody. Welcome. We're glad you're here. It's been a good lunch. We've got two sponsors. I'm Barry Gilman, by the way. I'm the CEO of Hamlet Homes. We're happy to have everyone here. Our Hamlet team is going to talk after Josh speaks and tell you a little bit about our neighborhoods, because we have 5, 6 model homes all around right now that are open that we'd love you to see and take your clients to them. Josh and Intercap have been one of our preferred lenders for many years now, and they've been great to work with. Justin with Utah Mortgage is also one of the sponsors today, and so those are two of our lenders that are great to work with.
He should be here in a second.
Justin with Utah Mortgage should be here shortly. I'm going to hand things over to Stacy to introduce Josh, and then after Josh speaks, we'll have Hamlet Group talk a little bit about our neighborhoods, and then lunch, and we're ready to go. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you guys for coming. Okay, so first I want to introduce Josh, but I want to say a few things about him because first he's amazing. He is the chairman of Intercap Lending, and he is probably one of the best people I ever worked for. So he's awesome. But I want to give you a little bit of his background just so you can kind of, as he's going through all this, you can kind of know where he comes from. So he is the founder of Romney Ventures Real Estate Firm. He's the chairman of Intercap Lending, which you know. He's on the board of Romney Institute of Public Management at BYU. He's on the board of Garden Policy Institute at University of Utah. He's president of Charity Vision International, where they go to these other countries. They help people with vision issues. He's on the Impact Investment Council at IHC. He's on the board Shelter the Homeless for Salt Lake City. And he's on the board for 1,000 Points of Life. And last but not least, so he could be smart and learn about how to do all this stuff, he has a master's in business at Harvard. At Harvard University. So anyway, that's everything about him, and I'm excited for you guys to sit through this presentation. I think it will explain a lot about why we are where we are from an economic standpoint, and he'll do some Q&A when we're finished. So, all right.
Okay, so this hopefully will be interesting to you. I'm going to start really big, talk about economic stuff that's happening. We're all watching inflation. I'll give some of the answers about what we think is happening there. Should we turn lights on? I don't care. Make it a little more romantic. And then we're gonna get really into housing, what's happening in the housing market. That's pretty too romantic. There we go. So I think the important thing to understand is the government during COVID, and a lot of people don't understand this, they spent an additional $5.3 trillion above what they normally spend, above their annual budget, $5.3 trillion. So when you do that, it has some real effect. It does a lot of crazy things. It saved us from going into likely a depression. Most countries around the world did this kind of spending. But for us, we spent $5.3 trillion. It boosted the economy for quite a while. Now we're dealing with the second and third term effect of putting that much money in the economy. When they did it, they honestly spent it anywhere. They didn't care if there was fraud. They weren't looking into it. They just wanted money in people's pockets. One of the things they did really aggressively was buy mortgage-backed securities with that money. So what happens when you buy mortgage-backed securities, when you have a huge buyer come in and buy all these mortgage-backed securities, drives interest rates really low. So the reason we had low interest rates over the last 2 years, or not the last 2 years, but 6 months ago, the last 2 years, was because the government manipulated the housing market. So they drove rates to a point. It's interesting. I think a lot of times they think we're going to create affordability. You see this time and time again with the government. They want to create affordability in housing, so they lower rates. What happens when you lower rates? Just increase housing prices. So that is not an effective way to create affordable housing on lowering rates, but the government has done it in the past and will continue to do that to try and create affordability by lowering rates. But so we saw what happened when you lower rates. All of us in the room did really well because housing prices were exploding. People were buying and selling. It was a really good time. But people are looking and kind of hoping that we're going to have rates like that again. This will only happen if the government starts manipulating the housing market again, buying mortgage-backed securities. They might do that. It was very effective. It created a ton of wealth. Think about how much wealth was created in the country because of this, by driving housing prices up. And we've seen housing prices haven't come down. So there's a ton of wealth created for homeowners. But it was very effective. Now, we all know they pushed it too far. It went on too long. They kept interest rates too low, way too long, probably 9 months too long. There's a couple reasons they did that were very political. But they kept interest rates really low, a little too long, and now they're having to raise interest rates. And so we've seen they're raising interest rates at a higher level than they've ever raised them before, and faster than they've ever raised them not higher level, but at higher level in recent history, but they're raising it faster than they've ever had to raise it before. And they're doing that because inflation really was rampant. It was getting out of control. And because they were 9 months late. So if they started raising, but they knew they needed to raise it, they would have been much more of a flat curve like that, but they didn't. So we're late, so they're being overly aggressive, and this has some serious consequences. So let's deal with some of the consequences. One is in the banking industry. So we're just starting to see this right now. So we've seen that with Silicon Valley Bank and 4 or 5 other banks who are failing. When you raise interest rates too low and those banks aren't hedged properly and they're holding all these mortgage-backed securities, they have real issues. So one of the things when you raise interest rates, the goal is to really just destroy the economy. It takes a sledgehammer for the entire economy. It sometimes takes a while, and it starts popping up in different areas. It doesn't kind of hit the whole economy as a whole at once, but it starts popping up in certain areas. And this, I think, was unexpected to most people. It was unexpected how much it would hit the banks. And this happened. Silicon Valley Bank, it happened first because they were very tech heavy. They were a very tech heavy bank. And a lot of their depositors were in the tech industry. The tech industry was getting hit so hard. People were putting more money in the tech industry and investing in these companies like they have in the past. So all these guys started pulling their money out of banks or out of this bank. And so with all these deposits coming out of this bank, the bank said, we need to go sell a whole bunch of our assets. And everyone kind of assumed their assets were still worth what they paid for them. They went to sell $15 billion of 10-year treasuries. And when the 10-year treasury rate goes up, the value goes down, and those 10-year treasuries, they lost about $2 billion when they sold those treasuries. And everyone said, wait a second, this bank's in major trouble. So they all started pulling more money out, the bank failed. And then we started looking at other banks and realized all these banks hold a ton of 10-year treasuries at 1.5% interest. And now that the interest rate is 3.5%, those 10-year treasuries aren't worth what we thought they were. And so that's why all these banks are kind of getting hammered. What's interesting is if you look at how much the Fed is putting into banking, so the 2008 crisis, which we thought was horrible, they put in, I think, 100 and something billion. This one, they're 153 billion. They're having to put in rates. This was as of a couple weeks ago, so it's more than that now. So it's a real issue. You combine that with what's happening in the office space. So the office market is going to get hammered over the next couple of years. A couple reasons for that. There's actually a lot of reasons for that. One is COVID related. People are working from home. They're not in the office much. 2 is AI. People anticipate that a lot of people that were going to be employed in kind of these office jobs are now going to be replaced by computers. And the third is really all interest rate driven. There's about $2 trillion in office rents that are rolling over in the next couple of years. And when you have to roll over a new interest rate and you have the value of the building is less because its occupancy is down and the rental rate's higher, it's harder to make it. For those that follow cap rates are higher across the board. So cap rates really kind of follow. They should always be lower than the interest rate. So when interest rates go up, cap rates will go up as well. So this has been a real problem on the office market. Other industries aren't getting hit as hard, but the office market's going to get hammered, which means banking is going to get hammered. Really going to be interesting. So all that really related to the Fed raising interest rates so fast. So that is their goal, to kind of hammer the economy, and they are succeeding in some areas and failing in others. So what does the future hold? So we care a lot about this. Obviously in the mortgage world, this is basically when does the Fed start lowering interest rates? That first interest rate, and this, a lot of people predicting really it's kind of October, November, December, when we think there'll be some quarter point decreases. Having said that, almost every day that goes by, people are predicting that date to be further and further out. So it was kind of June, July, August. Now it's kind of October, November, December. I'm actually hearing a lot of people now saying not till next year. So we'll see. We really don't know when that'll happen. But there's a few clues. This is kind of saying the same thing. Should skip this slide as well. So one thing that's interesting, so high rates for the government. When you think about who the biggest borrower is in the entire world, it's the U.S. government. We borrow more money than anybody else. And so when interest rates go up, it's actually the government that gets hit really, really hard. They should have been doing 50 or 100-year treasury bills, borrow as much money as they could doing that. But since they have 2, 3, 6-month treasury bill, 2, 3-year, 10-year, those are all coming due. So they're having to reissue bonds and treasury bills at the higher interest rate, which means they're paying higher interest payments. As of right now, the interest payment is equivalent to the entire amount of money they spend on defense. So our interest payments and defense budget are the same. So, and as we continue to borrow more money, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. Because we see here's what the government projection looks like. This is our budget as of today. This is the budget projection. It's about to get ugly. So, especially with high interest rates. So there does come a point where about half of our budget will be spent on interest. We're hoping for a soft landing, but most people at this point are predicting that we're not going to have a soft landing, that we're going to go into a recession. So the economy is likely going to hit a recession, which is a little scary for most people. Talk about why in this room we usually kind of feel the opposite, and that is it's funny. I was with the number 2 person from Edward Jones, and he was kind of saying that he was nervous over this next 6 months, what's going to happen, and the value of their stock portfolios, all that kind of stuff. And I said, what's interesting is usually in the real estate market, we get hit early and a little bit harder than the stock market. But then when they're getting hit hard is when we recover because rates go down. And so we're kind of almost a lot of times doing something a little different or a little earlier or a little later than the rest of the market. So we can talk about when I think that's going to happen, what that's going to look like. So one of the big things that we're looking at is CPI to know when the Fed is going to start lowering interest rates. And what we know, and I like to look at kind of 3-month and 1-month changes more than annual numbers. So usually what we're looking at CPI is annual numbers, and the annual numbers don't really tell a lot of the story because it's taking data from 11 or 12 or 10 months previous. So I like to kind of look at 1 month or 3 month. And the bad news is even on kind of the 1 month and 3 month changes, we can look at the core CPI. So core strips out energy and food prices, which tend to be a lot more volatile. And if you look at full CPI, it's coming down. So the CPI numbers look really good because energy and food prices are coming down a bit. I don't know if you guys noticed, but the egg prices are back to normal. That's exciting. But if you take the core CPI, which is what the Fed tends to look more at, the numbers are not very good. So they're still kind of in that mid to high 5s. So it's not coming down as fast as they suspected. So there's areas of the economy that are getting hammered and will continue to get hammered. But some of this stuff, if you look at CPI, is not coming in. And so that is somewhat troubling. This is one that I think is really interesting, and that is we're looking at consumer spending. It's finally kind of coming down for 2 months. And then this last month in April, we got hit with a big surprise that it was higher than average. So people are spending more money than the Fed wants. They want that number going down, but it's going up. So this is a lot of people, when they saw this number, which came out about a week ago, change your prediction about when the Fed's going to start lowering interest rates. So, by the way, if anyone has any questions, I'm going through this really, really fast. This is like, there's a lot of information to take in. If you want to ask me questions, feel free to ask. Yes.
So with the core CPI, housing's a big part of that. The housing lags behind. How do you think that will affect?
Yeah, so housing, particularly so rental market, they look at the rental stuff on housing. And if you look at, again, rental stuff, and I actually took out a couple slides on that, but the rental market is, it takes its annualized number again as well. And so it's like, you think about what rents are doing, they annualize 12 months. And so we know 10 months ago, 11 months ago, 12 months ago, rents were increasing really, really fast. Rents are slightly coming down right now, but the numbers for the CPI look like they're still going up in rent. So it's still positive. So this is kind of another one of those annualized numbers, makes less sense than looking at the monthly numbers, which is why we kind of like to strip it out, look at the 1 month, 3 month, as well as annual. Yes.
Is the commercial space included in CPI?
Commercial's not directly, indirectly, almost every expense is to some degree, but not directly. So you would not see that impact the CPI, at least for a while. So the 10-year. So in a mortgage company, we look at this every day and we kind of obsess over this. And we watch it really closely, and you might wonder why, and this is why. This is why we look at that number a lot. So the 10-year is this blue line right here. Mortgage rates are this red line right here. So that's why we obsess over them. So when we want to know what mortgages are going to do, we typically look at that. Just kind of say, all right, so we know what interest rates, we know what mortgage rates are going to do. And almost always the mortgage rate is about 170, 150 to 190. So usually about 170 basis points higher. So 1.5% higher than that rate. Except for certain times. And if you look at the end of this graph right here, it looks like it's falling, but this all of a sudden, this point becomes a little heavy. It becomes a little wide. And right now we're up here. When the gap between the mortgage-backed security and 10-year has gotten really wide. So we're over 300 basis points in terms of how much higher interest rate or mortgage rates are than the 10-year treasury. If anyone want to guess why that is? Why does that happen? So it's actually, you would think, so riskier assets usually require a higher return. People want a higher return on a riskier asset. But a mortgage-backed security is riskier than 10-year. Some ways yes, in some ways no. The 10-year mortgage-backed securities, if you think about it, most of your package and sold to Fannie and Freddie are guaranteed by Fannie and Freddie. Fannie and Freddie are owned by the federal government. This happened in 2008. Federal government bought Fannie and Freddie when it looked like that might be in some financial trouble. So they bought them. So the risk of default on mortgage-backed securities is actually pretty close to zero. The reason that people don't like mortgage-backed securities or want a higher interest rate in mortgage-backed securities is because in the 10-year treasury, you have 10 years of payments guaranteed at that rate. No matter what, you're getting those payments. On the mortgage-backed securities, you have payments until rates go down, and you get all your money back. So it's so easy to refinance in a mortgage-backed security. So if you think about yourself as an investor and not like an investor investing $100, an investor investing a couple $1 billion, and you have the option to buy a 10-year or mortgage-backed security. And let's say you bought the mortgage-backed security at 6%, and then all of a sudden rates go down dramatically. Now the mortgage-backed security is at 3%, and the 10-year or the 10 years at 1.5% or 1%, and you've got all your money back. Now you have to go redeploy that money, but now you're going to get 3% interest on a mortgage-backed security or 1% on a 10-year, and it's a bad time to reinvest. So when the market thinks that there's a lot of volatility where they think the rates are coming down, this gap gets really big. So the good news is the market think rates are coming down. Bad news is that could even be 2 or 3 years out, but it at least shows the market thinks the rates are a little too high. There's a lot of volatility, the rates have come down. So, but we are in kind of one of those periods. So if you think about mortgage-backed, so the 10-year treasury right now is at 3.6. Where should it be realistically? It should be in the low 5s. That's where interest rates should be. If we were in a stable, like Fed's not going to keep raising rates, or they're not going to start dropping rates, like we're in a kind of a steady Federal Reserve period, rates should be kind of in the low 5s as of today. So, so people a lot of times like, where do you think rates are going to go? If we had some stability right now, it'd probably be in the low to mid 5s. So, so if you think about, if we get to a point where the Fed starts lowering interest rates and we have some stability, they're not going to lower down to where they were before, but they'll start lowering it to a point and create some stability. So I do think rates will get to that low 5s at some point.
John,
Yes.
do you have your own assessment or best guess of when
That will be?
Yeah, exactly.
I thought the end of this year, that was a couple months ago. I'm actually starting to think it might be early next year before we see rates really start to come down. But having said that, if things change, and there'd be 1 or 2 things, I'm actually gonna go through that. So there's one signal that we can watch really closely. I'm gonna skip this slide. There's one signal we can watch really closely that would tell us exactly when rates are going down. In my opinion. But this is kind of projections. This is from earlier this year, but these are projections about where inflation is going to be this year. So somewhere between 1.3% and 7% is a market best guess. So we really have so that's kind of the big question. So if you can tell me when inflation is going to turn, that's when we'll know. So CPI forecast as of today, this is what everyone thinks is going to happen. So that CPI will start dropping kind of December, maybe start dropping this summer, and then start dropping all the way through December 2025. So This is kind of the market's best guess. And so the question is, when would the Fed start lowering interest rates on that graph? It would probably be the end of this year, early next year, to start dropping interest rates. So there was a question on rents. So here's what rents have been doing. So rents were kind of skyrocketing kind of over the last 2 years. Really seen some high increases. We did get a little period of dropping, and now they're kind of starting to head back up a little again, but it's nothing dramatic. It's nothing like we've seen in the last 2 years. So rents are a little bit more stable, but not coming down as much as they'd hoped, but a little bit more stable. This is partially because vacancies are up almost across the board on rental markets. Why do you guys think, why would vacancies be going up? We have a housing shortage. We all know that. Why are vacancies going up in apartments right now? So everyone there's a lot of reasons. Yeah, people moving with parents. What about inventory? A lot of inventory coming online. So a lot of apartments getting built. The other thing that's interesting is a lot of housing units being converted to rentals. So in terms of inventory, a lot of inventory coming online, people kind of pulling out just in that market, living with parents, that kind of stuff. So it is interesting to see just on the fringes, some of those numbers really start having an impact in terms of occupancy. So as we think about CPI and people spending more money, I looked at that number where we showed that people are actually spending more money. One of the big things is how much we really look at is how much people are saving and where savings rates. And savings rates are actually getting kind of back to where we were in 2008, so pretty low. But we did have some huge spikes. You guys know why we spiked the last 2 years? Free money. So this shows the savings rates. First round, do those checks, savings rates jump. Second round, jump. Third round, jump. And look how fast they came down. So we got the money and we spent the money. It's exactly what the Fed wanted us to do. They sent a ton of money out to everybody. It was really easy to qualify for this money. I think a couple of my kids even got checks. It's like, I don't know how that happened. But the money came, people spent it really, really fast. And so what happens if you think about the inflation that we've been experiencing, the fact they sent so much money out at the same time that we had massive production issues. We couldn't produce as many goods as we thought we'd be able to produce. China shutting down. We couldn't get goods in through the Long Beach ports or other ports. It was clearly going to happen that we're going to have inflation. And the Fed early on said it was all a supply side issue. It wasn't a demand side issue. It was all supply side. As soon as supply kind of works itself out, inflation will go away. That's what they were saying publicly. They didn't believe it. That's what they're saying publicly. But obviously, it's much more than supply. Supply is almost entirely back to normal, and we're still dealing with a lot of inflation. So it really is a fundamental core issue that we have not yet solved. Sorry, that one is an old slide, but so we are. I'm gonna skip this one. This is, I think, if you want to know when inflation is coming down, this is the graph that will tell you when these numbers change. So right here is the unemployment rate, which is historically low. This is the monthly payroll gains, how many people we're hiring. And this is what the Fed's looking at really, really closely. And this is the issue we have with our economy, is we should be at a point by now with rates being as high as they've been for as long as they've been, where we're losing a lot of employees. Employees are getting fired like crazy. In fact, to hit the Fed's target unemployment level by the end of this year, we should be losing about 500,000 jobs per month right now. And what are we doing instead? Adding 200,000. So when we start seeing 500,000 or 1 million job loss months, that's when we know the Fed will start getting serious about lowering rates. But as long as this number is still positive, they're not going to lower rates. They're not going to do it. So that'll be really key. And the reason for that is not that they don't want people to have jobs. It's that pull back on this. It's this wage bumps. So we have wages going up way too much. So we have really low unemployment. Wages go up way too fast and way too heavy. When wages go up too heavy, wages are going up. What happens? People spend money. So it all is kind of correlating. So we look at those spending numbers. People are spending more. That's happening because people are employed. They're making more money. They're spending all the money they get. No one likes to save. I saw the savings rates really low. And so this is what the Fed's really looking at. They're really nervous about these wage numbers. I will say job openings are starting to drop, which is really good sign. It's just kind of a leading indicator. Having said that, we had, I think 10 million at the kind of peak, 10 million job openings and 5 million unemployed people. So we have so even though job openings are coming down, it doesn't mean fewer people are going to get hired, but it's kind of headed on the right trend, which is a good sign. And again, this is another graph showing job openings. So here's the number of people we have, are people that we have that are unemployed. Here's the number of job openings. We're still way too high, so way too many job openings, but at least it's headed in the right direction and not the wrong direction. Question is when those intersect.
Where's the job growth coming from? Like,
Where do you guys think? You guys heard? We know it's not tech, right? So tech is laying off. Hospitality. So it is. It's almost all service related. So and the thing we're not really seeing is and I don't know why, but the tech tends to be much higher paying, and the service related tends to be much lower paying. So we're kind of replacing high pay with low pay. Wages overall are still going up. I think it's partly just because there's so many more people being hired. But at some point, when this kind of turns and shifts and we start losing jobs, wage growth is going to really start to plummet. So, but yeah, we're seeing almost all the job additions. If you look kind of at a graph of where the job openings are happening, it's almost all service related. So hotel, restaurant, massage, haircut, I mean, all that kind of stuff is really, really growing really fast. So, so unemployment levels we're seeing just stay really, really low, lower than we'd like them to be. So this is a 3-month average change in payroll. So we actually, if you kind of look at 3 months, so the good news is wages are starting to come down. If you're kind of averaging 3 months, there are months that are anomalies, but we do think wages are finally starting to come down. Another reason we don't like low unemployment. If you look up here, it's the highest quits rate in the nation. So Utah is the second highest quits rate in the entire nation. So when you get unemployment really low, not only does it drive wages up, it causes people to quit and move jobs, which really hurts productivity. So when you hurt your productivity, you need to hire more people. So it kind of is a vicious cycle of having really low unemployment. So you have more people to be hired, trained, you spend a lot of money, just really, really harmful for the economy in the long run. So I'm going to stop talking about this. So in terms of unemployment, which is really interesting, this is the 2007 recession where unemployment levels got, this is what happened during COVID. So when they spent their $5.3 trillion, that's why. It's because unemployment got crazy. And they spent that $5.3 trillion, what happened? They spent a little too much, maybe $1 trillion or two too much. They could have known that, but that's how it happened. So just drove unemployment too high or too low. So one other thing that happened in combination with all this is we had the visas in the U.S. kind of a historic low. So not only do we have unemployment issues here in the country and people trying to hire employees, we had almost no one coming into the country. So that added to our unemployment issues. Now we're kind of getting back to normal. So if you think about what's happening now, if you combine this, so we're going to have a lot more people coming into the country to work. You have AI coming in that's going to replace a lot of jobs, and you have the economy, just the Fed really doing everything they can to hammer the economy. When this turns, I think it's going to get relatively ugly, but we'll see. So in terms of how many jobs AI will replace, which I think is kind of fun to think about, I actually asked ChatGPT. And they said, it's interesting what they said. They said AI would add 12 million jobs to the economy. This is global, not US. But if you add Goldman Sachs, 300 million jobs lost from AI. So somewhere between plus 12 and 300 minus 300 million. I probably trust the compute, not the computer on this one. Trust Goldman Sachs. So it's going to be a very huge job displacement. There'll be a lot of people that will be out of work over the coming years because of AI. Skip that. So let's talk housing. So all this is kind of like, it's kind of all bad news, right? The economy is really scary. We know we're almost certainly headed into a recession. Rates are really high. All this is kind of horrifying. And if you think about it, this is the number of people in the US saying it's a good time to buy a house, historic lows, right? It's like, it's a horrible time to buy a house. It's scary. There's high rates. There's all this kind of stuff happening. except for one thing, and that is, I like Warren Buffett. He explains the value investing, what gives you opportunities is other people doing dumb things. So almost when was the worst time to buy your house? Probably right here, right? So when everyone thinks it's a really good time to buy a house, that was probably a really bad time to buy a house because you're paying $100,000 over ask. You got a nice low mortgage rate. Do you know how long it takes to make up a low mortgage rate when you overpaid by a house by 100,000? Maybe a little more than 30 years. So having said that, let's talk about the housing market and why I actually think it's probably one of the best times to buy, even though the market thinks it's not. One, inventory is crazy low. We have no inventory. We see this compared to other years. It's better than 2021 and 2022. But still kind of historic lows compared to averages. Really, really low inventory, which is scary. Weekly listings. So we're adding this. It's kind of, this looks at week by week. How many houses we're adding to the market. We need to add 100,000 houses every week, US wide, to kind of keep at break even pace. And we've been adding well under 100,000. So here's the 100,000 mark. You can kind of see we have not. So that's why our inventory issues are getting worse and worse, is we're not building or supplying enough housing to the market to keep up with demand. So in terms of listings are down as well. Obviously, if you don't have a house to sell, listings are way down. We have a significant housing shortage. If you look at 2008, we were up 2 million houses. 2 million houses too many in 2008. If you fast forward to 2021, 2022, we're about 2 million houses too short. So the kind of the reverse problem, we have way too few houses. This really started happening kind of in that 2011, 12 period. We started adding more households and we built houses. And so we really just got into more and more of a problem on the inventory side. So massive housing shortage. So think about this as well. If you have a housing shortage, no supply coming on, and you make houses really cheap to buy by artificially lowering interest rates, what's going to happen to prices? What we saw 25% growth year over year in certain markets. I mean, it was crazy what was happening because we had no inventory and the government made the cost to buy them really cheap. So let's talk about why we don't have inventory. There's a lot of reasons. Barry's most of the problem. Just kidding. So we'll talk about why we don't have inventory. So number one, people frozen in their homes, right? We all know this. So if you have a 2.5–3% mortgage rate, it becomes very difficult to sell. That asset is very valuable. And that's why we're seeing some areas inventory come online on the rental side. Because rather than rent or sell a house where you have a 2.5% mortgage, it's like, I'm just going to rent it. And I can actually rent it pretty cheap, still make my mortgage payment, keep a free house, buy a new one. So we're seeing that. But also just people saying, I can't really afford to transition out of a low interest rate into a high interest rate home, even though it's the home I want and dream of. I just can't make that transition rate. So the gap is too big between 2.5 and 6.5. So just a really big thing. And this is how many. So this is looking at the U.S. as a whole, where people have their interest rates, and Utah actually matches pretty closely. So if you look at kind of 4%, almost everybody's below 4%. So people just really have cheap mortgages. So one issue why we don't have any inventory is because of this. We don't have people selling. They're holding on their houses. They're just not selling and trading like they normally would. So what happens when you don't have those houses? The existing houses selling is this gray bar right here looks at the new house, what percent of the entire sales market they make up. And it's usually pretty low. We kind of see the kind of the 10–15% range. Right now, we're kind of almost 28–29% of all houses sold are new houses. Good news for Barry. So, and that's because that's really all that's available. If you look out there, there's just not as much of the used inventory available, so people have to buy new. So we're seeing big percent go new. The other thing, so if you kind of think about this, so lack of supply happening on that front, you go to this, which is on the demand side. So demand is down too. So supply is down. We also know demand is down. So demand is down because people can't qualify. Number one, they think it's expensive, right? They just think housing's really expensive, rates are really expensive. They don't want to lock in at 6.5 or 7% interest rate. And there's just a huge number of people that don't qualify at any price. they're not going to qualify for housing. Their income doesn't meet the housing guidelines. One example to kind of put that in perspective, this shows if you want to buy a medium priced home, how much money you need to make. Used to be kind of $40,000 to $60,000, kind of what you need to make 40, 55 or for a medium priced home. Today, 112,000. So saw that just jump right here. This is due to two factors. One, mortgage rates got up. Two, medium price home exploded. So those two things combined have made it really unaffordable for a huge portion of the population to buy housing. So all this kind of combined, so the lack of demand, lack of supply, we see the total number of sales really dropping, which makes sense. I will say, actually, but we're also seeing lowest mortgage apps in 10 years. So mortgage people just aren't. This is usually a month or two earlier than when you guys will actually see it. We'll see the apps typically well before things go under contract. People want to know what they qualify for before they talk to realtors. So they're talking to us, getting mortgage apps. We've seen those numbers really kind of at historic lows. And so with all this happening right now, what's happening to pricing? So this is kind of the worst case scenario. Goldman Sachs said the 6% decline this year. What would a 6% decline look like in perspective? Almost nothing, right? 6% decline is almost nothing. However, Goldman is really the only group that's predicting a housing price decline. I go through almost everyone else is saying housing's going to go up this year. And I actually think this as well. So housing's gone down a bit, but almost everyone's predicting housing to start going up. If you think one other thing to think about when you think about housing price, and this is on averages for Utah and for the country as a whole, I'll ask you in this room, what's the easiest price home to sell? Would it be 400 or 800,000? 400. So, and that's true across every market in the U.S. right now. The lower price home is selling faster than the higher price home. And so if you sell a lot more on a lower price home and you take the average of what's selling, it's going to look like prices are going down, even though they're not. So I actually think what's happening is prices are actually going up. We're staying really steady, even though national average shows it dropping maybe 1 or 2%, kind of showing like 1.5% right now. I actually think all that's saying is that people are moving towards buying cheaper homes with a lower price home, and kind of the $1 million, $2 million to $3 million are sitting a little bit longer. So that's going to make the averages look like they're dropping. So I think that's happening. So if you think about price not dropping in a market like this, staying pretty steady, maybe dropping a little bit. We know the supply issues, we know the demand issues. What's the saying? Saying supply issue is a bigger deal than the demand issue. The demand is way off, but supply is so bad that prices aren't dropping. So when demand drops like this in a normal market, if you're buying, widgets and you can kind of keep supply at high, prices will just plummet. But when you can't control supply very well and demand drops, price will either go up or stay steady. But demand has dropped off so much. I mean, it's a massive drop off. We see mortgage applications kind of at 10-year lows. If you were to show me this graph without any other perspective and say, what's happened to housing price? I'd say, well, housing price has probably dropped 40%, right? This is like a horrible graph. To have that and say housing prices are steady tells me we have a major supply issue. Major supply issue. Yes.
That supply issue, Josh talked about how resale, so many people have low mortgage rates, so they're not going to sell. On the new home side, we also have limited demand. So most other builders we talk to are not starting as many homes as they were starting a couple of years ago. And we have the issue that we used to be able to build a home in 4, 5, 6 months. Now almost every builder takes 6 to 12 months to build a home. So when demand does come back, we can't increase supply overnight. It's going to be 6 to 12 months before we ramp up supply.
So I'm gonna talk more about that because that's the other big issue. I'm gonna do a whole thing on housing or on new housing, but let me hit you on that because it takes you how long to build a house? So if you think about how long it really takes you to buy a house, to build a house, so you develop and entitle your own ground, right?
Yes.
So how long is it, like by the time you buy a piece of ground and entitle it, how long does it really take you?
2 years to deliver.
Yes, so 2 to 3 years. And what's happening is most builders right now are pulling out of the land contracts. So, which is a 2 to 3 year problem, not just a 4 to 12 month problem. It's a 2 to 3 year problem. So when do we get supply back to normal? When builders are building 2 or 3 years ago. So it becomes a real issue, something to be concerned about. But I'll talk more about it. But I do want to focus on this. So if you think about, again, going back to the price of housing and housing valuations, all that kind of stuff, this goes back to 1977. And these are quarterly numbers in terms of housing price appreciation over different quarters. How many quarters do you lose? Not that many. This is 2008. We had 2 million houses too many. We had mortgage issues. We had some major structural issues that caused massive fraud, all that kind of stuff that caused this. And even if you bought a house kind of right here and you sold it right here, you made money. There's almost not a period in U.S. history where if you held a house for 3 or 4 or 5 years that you could have lost money. Unless, you did something really stupid, you bought a house full of asbestos, whatever. But if you bought kind of at a normal price, at a market price, and sold 3 or 4 or 5 years later, you made money in housing. And some years, you made a ton of money. Some years like here, you sell here. I mean, it's like housing almost never goes down in value. It's really steady, and it's in large part because supply is really restrained. There's periods where it gets out. So we had too much supply here, but for the most part, supply is restrained. So I talked about, let me see. So so this is showing the home price dropping nationally. So we are at a point, housing prices are barely dropping, but I hopefully explained that. I don't really believe it, but I also think it's coming back. So I'll focus more on housing price. So if you do think about that drop, we're seeing actually housing prices going up in the east and down in the west. I actually do think housing price in Utah dropped 5 to 6%. I think that has happened. But if you look at national average, I think it's going up. But Utah's dropped. Why is Utah dropped? The rest of the nation probably going up. Dudes here a little bit. Partially because our pricing went up so fast. We had so much appreciation. It was not sustainable. We went up so fast, and every market you kind of see there had the same thing. John Burns says, his group says that they actually think it's mostly because of tech. That's having a big impact. I think it's having a bit of an impact in Utah, but not that much. I think it's kind of overstated. But potentially tech has had some impact in terms of housing price because we're having big tech layoffs. This is showing certain markets, the biggest losses. Boise, we know, Boise overbuilt. We've seen Salt Lake at 7, Provo at 7, Ogden -7. So we are seeing a price decrease in this market, which is probably some good news for buyers here. Here's the percent of homes that are being delivered under $300,000. So how many? Interesting. This is looking from 2019. In 2019, you wouldn't have laughed because 18% of houses were being delivered under $300,000. That was 4 years ago. Today, it's at 1%. We know it's not 1%.
Yeah.
So there's nothing delivered in that under $300,000 range. There's certain markets where they can still do it. Baltimore, San Antonio, they can still deliver. But this is not one of those markets. So I'm gonna actually ask Barry. Barry, why can we not deliver? Not just you. Why can no one deliver a $300,000 home?
Costs have gone up, and local government delays and fees, impact fees, all play a part.
So I think you hit all 4. That's it. So wages is huge, but land is huge. We all know that. We all pay attention to land. Land is really big. There was a period there where a lot of people didn't know what their land was worth, and entitlement was hard. You have a developer come in, and anyway, you get some deals, but those days are gone. The land that's left, everyone knows what it's worth. It's worth a lot. You know what housing price has done. So you're not getting good deals on land. Barry tries, but he can't. So the land prices are really high. Entitlement is really hard. What's interesting is even 2 years ago, there were certain city councils that were really pro-growth, wanted a lot of new housing in their communities. I don't know of one city council anywhere that's pro-growth right now. They're all pulling back. They want smart growth, they call it, which is no growth. So they are they're really, really hard to work with. And a lot of them have been, the ones that were pro-growth have been replaced by those who were not pro-growth. So what's happening as a result is we're delivering, this is a nationwide number, we're delivering 200,000 fewer homes. We're starting 200,000 fewer homes we're delivering. So the number of homes that are getting delivered is the number of homes that are getting started is way less than the homes that are getting delivered. So builders are slowing down, it's basically saying dramatically. We are, however, seeing permits start to increase. The permits started out really low. We are starting to see permits pick up a little bit. We'll talk about why that is, but this is looking since 2003, so over 20 years, how many homes, single-family homes are in construction. And we see from the peak here that it's coming down at a pretty fast pace. So why did this happen? Builders got nervous in the last 6 months or a year. They saw huge number, they saw the demand side really becoming a problem. And so they really pulled back in a big way. What's interesting is I think they're now understanding the supply side issues. And they're realizing, remember that graph that showed 30% or 25% of new homes are being delivered are new homes? I think they're just starting to realize that that's an issue. And so they're starting to pull permits. They're really starting to pull permits. But how long does it take, like for most builders to deliver that? Barry said it could be 2 to 3 years. So it could be a long time. Now, if you're pulling permits, it's faster. But if you haven't bought ground, you've been backing out of contracts, which you've seen a lot of it, it takes years to recover. And if we look at Utah specifically, this is how many permits were expected to be pulled in the state of Utah. 2021, we actually had 40,000. 2022, it dropped to 30,000. In 2023, they expected to drop even more. So the number of permits we're pulling in this state is dropping it's dropping while the national average tends to be going up. So what's wrong with Utah, Barry?
Like you said, we had a bigger run up in 2021 than the rest of the country, so we're slowing down faster.
Yeah. So Utah, and I think Utah has a few challenges that almost no other state has. So we'll talk about first growth. We're still expected to grow dramatically, right? So we're going to have massive population growth in this state. If you look at that kind of specifically, what does it look like? This number right here is the number of people moving into the state from other states. This is how many babies we're having. You combine those two, this is the number. So we're adding 60,000 people a year. So we're adding bountiful every year to our state. So huge population growth and fewer permits. So that's probably not a great recipe for housing affordability. In fact, it'd be the opposite. So if we're going to keep adding, pace we're adding, and we can't build homes, pace we'd like to build homes, we're going to have a real problem. Where is the growth happening? Utah counties, this is in 2021 to 2022, Utah counties 40% of growth. Salt Lake was 16%. Why is this? Because Salt Lake is really starting to run out of developable ground. There's still a lot of ground out there, and you'll see occasionally somebody drive past like, well, that ought to be developed. Yeah. I assure you, every time you do that, say someone ought to develop that piece, there's a reason it hasn't been developed. Whether it's utilities or soil or contamination, all those types of things. Some of those soil issues we're seeing where they develop with soil where they should have been developed. See what happens. And I think it's going to make builders more nervous on some of these areas where they're a little harder to develop. But Utah is a tricky place, more than others. I don't know if you can see this very well. Easy, okay. So the light areas, like kind of the white, that's right here, that's private ground. Everything else that's not white is publicly owned. So Utah is actually, it looks really big on the map. When you think about how much of it's private, we're actually the size of West Virginia, which is privately owned, so a very small state. So only about 25% of the state is privately owned. So as you think about a builder and having land and being able to develop another area, and grow, it becomes very challenging. If you think about markets like Dallas or Phoenix, it's almost all privately owned in the areas around the big cities, and they can grow in almost any direction as far as they can go, as far as the eye can see. They can keep building and building and building. Denver is similar. Utah is not that way. If you think about the Wasatch Front, the ranges we have, the lakes, and the private ground, it's very limited in terms of where we can grow. So if you start adding some of these limiting factors into the state, the anti-growth city councils, the limited ground, a couple other things we can add would be water. Just looking at Great Salt Lake water levels. This is in the 80s when it got high. Here's where we are today. Actually, right there. Massive this week, but we have water issues. We know we have water issues that no other state really has. Nevada and I guess Nevada and Phoenix have it, but they solve it. They're much more aggressive in terms of finding solutions than we have been to this point. Having said that, we do have solutions to water. I won't get into this, but solutions to water are there. They're just a little more complicated. But having said that, Utah has some real challenges in terms of being able to supply housing, real challenges. So if you kind of say Utah is going to have worse supply than the nation on average and higher growth than the nation on average, what's happening to our pricing? There's almost no scenario where housing price in Utah doesn't go up. It is going, and the reality is if you think about rates right now, rates are high and, you know, people don't want to buy housing, they're nervous. So the market's pretty dead. People aren't aggressively buying. And what happens when rates go to 5%? All those people also say, oh, I got to buy a house immediately. So what happens when everyone starts buying and it's more affordable because rates are lower? What happens to housing prices at that point? You missed your window, right? Housing is going to explode when rates come down in this market. So, so people that ask me, like, when should I buy? When should I buy? I'm like, immediately buy as fast as you can. Start looking, buy your house. You might have 6 months, you might have a year. I don't really know. But when rates come down, you've missed it. You've missed your chance because prices are going up. Inventory is going to get worse. You're not going to be able to buy the house you want. And what this graph shows, and Stacy could take everyone through this, which is basically saying, is it better to buy a high-priced home at a low rate, which is where we were 6 months ago, right? So you get the high-priced home, but a really nice 2.5% rate, or would you rather get 5 or 7% off at a high rate? And the reality is, as long as you can refinance sometime in the next 5 or 6 years, it is much, much better. The math is even close. You want to buy a lower-priced home at a high rate. You might be paying that rate for a year. So if you can qualify, you do it, and then you refinance. We actually do a free refinance for intercap because we're encouraging people to get out and buy housing. We want the market moving a little bit. So we do a free refinance for anyone that's that buys in the next 4 months, 3 months, 2 months. We're running out of time. We'll probably extend it. Yeah.
But yeah, so if someone buys at this high interest rate, then they come back and do a free refinance.
Yeah. So we have the free five program, but the reality is, even if we didn't have that, the option to refinance at a lower rate of 5% and possibly, and before COVID hit, rates were in the high 4s, and maybe that's where we get back to. That was kind of a non-government manipulated housing or mortgage rate. So long term, when everything settles out, maybe we are in the mid to high 4s. We won't be in 3s or 2s unless the government gets involved, unless we have a major recession, depression, the government starts buying mortgage-backed securities, then all bets are off. But realistically, we're kind of in the low 5s, mid 5s, the high 4s, somewhere in that range. At which point it becomes very affordable for almost most of the buyers in this market to go out and buy housing, except for the fact that housing prices are going to explode. So if you want to be buying a house in Utah, the best time was not 6 months ago. That was probably the worst time in modern history. That was probably one of the worst times, even though it seemed really good. That's what the whole market is doing. And again, in real estate, you make money in real estate doing, looking at the world differently than everyone else. If everyone else is saying it's a bad time to buy, it's probably a good time to buy. So as you're working with your buyers, hopefully you can educate them fast. It took me, which is like an hour. So hopefully you can find a way to say it in like 30 seconds. But I wanted you to have like kind of a deep understanding of really understand why it is this way. But I truly believe it. And I truly believe that rates are going to come down sometime in the next 6 to 9 months. And we have missed the market, missed the buying opportunity in this market. So I personally telling my friends, my family, do it now, buy quickly, and buy from a builder if you can, because there's a lot of opportunities for builders. So with that, Barry, am I turning over to you? Or am I giving it to you?
I think our team's got a little bit on our new neighborhoods.
Question.
Yes. Oh, sorry. I can ask questions. Yeah, answer questions. Yes.
So actually, it's for bigger.
Oh, there we go. It's even better.
The $50 million in the grant money that's coming out here in Utah for
new construction at 450 or under, how
Yes.
likely is it that we'll have
Any
anything at
homes.
450?
450. So the new legislature passed a law to help first-time buyers buy a new home at 450 or less. We have nothing we can deliver at that price. Most of the builders I know cannot deliver a new construction home below 450. So
Can I give a cynical answer to that? There are 2 home building companies that have good political connections that got that passed. There's no reason if you really want to create affordability that you've done that for all homes, existing homes, at only new builds.
Yeah.
So if you do it for only
They're-
new builds and only for 2 companies that can deliver under that price.
Okay, so.
Anyway, I'll leave it at that. It's 100% townhome condo product. And even at townhome condo product, there's only a couple builders that can deliver at that price, who are delivering anyway. So I'll just say, I'll leave it at that, but I'm very cynical on that bill. I think they do things sometimes to help friends and family.
Yeah.
And that was one of those bills. There's no reason you wouldn't do that bill for all housing,
Right.
if you really want to create affordability.
Except for the fact that new housing creates.
Yeah.
yes.
If you can deliver at that
Yeah.
price,
Right.
which no one can. So, yeah, anyway, I'm
Other
cynical now.
questions for Josh?
Hey, thank you guys so much. Appreciate it. Okay, I'm gonna share those slides with Stacy. So if anybody wants to get those slides, Stacy will have them. So send her your email and she can give you those slides. I'm gonna go.
Or if you guys, if I from Hamlet Homes, just.
We recorded it too. We'll
Yeah,
send out a
Tammy will let
recording
me
of
know,
it.
I can get you I'll just get the slides to Tammy and she can send it out to.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you guys.
You just send them out to everyone
Yes,
automatically?
we will.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll just send them out to you.
Perfect.
How about
Yeah.
that?
Nate, who's
Nate,
coming
your
up?
team.
Let's see, yeah, thanks for all, we're all just gonna go over some of our current communities, where we're building like within some of the different counties in Utah. So Prestwick is one of our newest communities of townhomes in South Salt Lake area, just off of State Street, Rock 3400 South. They are townhomes that are just over 1,800 square foot, 3 bedrooms, 2.5 bath. As you see, kind of tucked away behind State Street, so it's like a quiet little neighborhood, but really close to downtown, different amenities. There's a little park in here, clubhouse with an exercise room, things like that. We are in the high 4s to the mid 5s. And timing wise, we're looking at about 9 left that are be done in the next 30, 60 days. So anyone that's looking for quick, we have that, and we are building behind here, so we'll be going into next year. A good array of product. Yeah, our garages, said the HOA takes care of like small mobile landscaping, so real easy maintenance, great for investment opportunity.
That's amazing.
We're all gonna take turns up here. Yeah, did you have a comment?
So Lakeshore is in North Utah County in American Fork. It's on the west side of I-15. And it's just across from the front runner, that area, Lakeshore Landing. I'm sure you've seen it. Anyway, so we have single family homes there. We have 36 lots and we have the best lake view lots, lake and mountain view lots. There's no HOA. We have one quick move-in and then we have another spec that will be ready in August. And the acreage is like, they're all have like 0.17, 2.22 acres. The prices start, the base price starts at 500 and goes up to 600. And we have 5 different floor plans. So any questions for Lakeshore?
Are you willing to finish basements?
We don't have basements there.
Oh,
Yeah.
No,
Yeah. So, no.
In other neighborhoods, yes. You
3 to
can
4
finish
bedrooms.
basements in other neighborhoods.
So Tayside Farm is in Pleasant Grove, it's right off the freeway, really great location, behind Evermore Park. And over there, we have 22 single-family homes like this, and then we have 40 townhomes with the two different floor plans on the homes. Yeah, base price is $470. The single family starts at $530. The HOA, we have an HOA there, it's $170. It's includes internet, water, sewer, trash, snow removal, landscaping. But we have gorgeous mountain views there. It's a great location, like I said. We're selling those. We should be having a grand opening mid-June-ish. So y'all should come to that. The model is almost finished. We just haven't been decorating. Any questions on our Pleasant Grove location?
Just a quick question on Hamlet in general. With your pricing, you all build spec, or is there like upgrade packages, finished packages that you need to account for in the pricing that you're representing there?
Yeah, so there is upgrades. Like we have some specs, but we also build from dirt. And so there is upgrades and options. We have a design center that you go to when you go to pick and choose.
Yeah, great. Kind of leading into that, so I'll go into our Brookside community. We actually are like in the last days of this one, so everything is as a spec home on this. So this price point, just kind of depending on.
And then where you're at in the development.
Correct. So on this one, we're down to our last 13 single family homes. So this is in Heber City. We are just east of like where the airport is, like we're right, you're within 5 minutes of the main street in Heber. So single family homes, we're ranging from square footage of like 3,300 to 5,600 square foot. They're about quarter to one lot left. That's a little over a third acre. This community, we are able to do basements, and actually every one of the remaining specs has a finished basement. And due to the, these are, a little bit larger lots, so 12 of the 13 have a 3-car garage, are included in the price. We have 2 homes left that have a second entrance, so that can only we're able to fit, second entrance to like a future like basement apartment, things like that. A few of the lots we're having the last 2 that's a great opportunity to see those. We're also within the next late summer, or some of our last ones will be completed. So we have some that are quick move-ins. They're currently ready right now. Kind of each month until maybe August, September. So not a lot of construction you'll be dealing with after someone that's looking for a brand new home. Great interior packages that are picked. So we're starting from the low 800s up into like the 1.2. Gorgeous area, mountain views. Some of the lots you just don't, it's view.
Silver Creek. So for any of you who sell up in the Wasatch Summit counties, Silver Creek is the largest master plan development up in Park City, and same developer as Daybreak. I have allergies, so I'm gonna get through this, but it's really getting to me. So it's about 1,300 homes that will be built. Lots of outdoor space, trails, parks, things like that. We're down to the last 3 townhomes that we have. 2254 square feet. It has a really great layout. We have 3 bedrooms. 1 bedroom is on the lower level that has its own separate entrance that you can walk out. So it's a unique floor plan that's really great. They all have 2-car garages, gourmet kitchens. It's a really beautiful layout. So you have tall ceilings, a really nice main living area where you guys can all gather. But we only have 3 left. So mid-9s on those, and you can do short-term rentals. Any questions?
Do you know how you're on your last few homes, do you know how the short-term rentals have performed, or like have an idea of what the nightly rates are for the ones that are already?
Yeah, actually they've done really well. I only know of one that has been active for the last couple of years. And I know as far as their, rental rates change with the seasons up there, of course. Winter and summer have been really well at that. One thing that helps is if you own in Park City, but you don't own and live in Park City proper, there's a shuttle that will come out and pick you up for free. So if you have renters come and stay, and I can follow up with you on pricing. I was gonna reach out to them and see how it's been going with all the changes. But that really made a difference in their rental bookings, was knowing that a shuttle can come out and pick up their renters. Any other questions? Yes.
Randomly, a friend of mine booked 1 year the Airbnb in the Hamlet homes, and I had to stay there.
Really?
Yeah, so it was nice. I don't know what she paid. I know she splurged, but it was like it had all layout. It was all nice and open. We had a great time.
Yay.
I didn't see any issue with renting it. The only thing that I had was like they needed more window treatments because it was so bright. I couldn't see, and I had like sensitivity, and I'm like, I was wearing my sunglasses
really well. Bringing natural light.
Yeah,
all
so
of
you
our
have
homes.
good natural light. That's the Airbnb's fault for not putting in window treatments. But I thought it was a great place to stay, and it was close, but
Yeah,
not like right in the heart, close enough.
thank you. And it's nice all the bedrooms have their own ensuite bath, which makes it really great as well. So, yeah, I mean, I have a friend who just keeps that one bedroom for when she's out hiking, trail running, and then she rents out the rest long term. And I mean, it's a really great floor plan, but thank you for sharing that. Great info. Any other questions? So we also have single family homes in the community. We have 33 lots. We still have quite a few left. Some are completed, close to completion that we're selling. And then we also have pre-built lots that we are also able to work with. So they can come, choose their plan, their structurals on some of them, design studio so they can still create their home. And then we have, when you're looking at the price of the low 1 millions, the 1-2s for some of our spec homes that are near completion for a quick move-in. And you're looking between 2,700 square feet and 3,700 square feet. So 4 to 5 bedrooms. We also do our standard features are really great. So as far as finishes, quality, we really excel and do well. So with Silver Creek, there is multiple builders out there. I don't know if you guys have been to a master plan development where they really do it well. So you're going to have your outdoor space. Soon we will have commercial. So it'll be kind of like a main street where there'll be amphitheater, outdoor concerts, parks. So it's really the most affordable new construction in Park City, located just off of I-80. So it's a really quick commute, about 35 minutes from the airport. No stoplights, just straight to the community. Any questions on?
It's a single family usually.
122 a month. Super low, affordable. Stood out in Park City, but it's. Page 10. One of my favorites. Are you guys familiar with the new Mayflower Resort that they're working on right now next to Deer Valley? It's pretty amazing. I really love this community. We have 41 luxury townhomes, 3 to 4 bedrooms. Our 4-bedroom plan, the Haven, also has 4 bedrooms, all have their ensuite bath included. So great if you're looking for investors. And our Luxton plan, which is our model home, is going to be a Luxton plan. We're in drywall right now, so we should have a model home polish. And that's going to be,
Should be in the Park City Showcase.
We're trying.
Yes, if we can hit the date.
You got it.
Talk about supply issues.
Yes. And what's great about this community is you can see that you're really sitting up above the Jordanelle. And then, you know, you're gonna have your water views, your mountain views, and majority of our lots, you'll have both. So it's a beautiful location. We have opened for sale, but like I said, fall is when we'll have a model. We can walk through both different plans at this time. As Josh said, it is the best time to buy. So whether we have the model or not, we can still show you the layout and get a good feel for the homes up there. And as well, you can choose on, depending on the lot, you can choose some of your design features. You can really create the home that you want. And short-term rentals are also allowed in this location. So it's a beautiful one. It's a stunner. Do you guys have any questions on this meeting? Questions?
So, are y'all gonna have like a space, like a usually like there one?
Yeah. No, like a separate walkout area. We don't have that in these ones. So I don't know if all of you worked with Hamlet Homes before, but just so you know, we have all of our sales agents here. We cross-sell our communities. It makes it really easy to build a relationship. And if you have somebody interested in new construction, you can just reach out. We can let you know what communities we're working on and where we're at. But we really pride ourselves in our customer service and want to make sure that you and your customer are taken care of. So if you have any questions, just reach out.
Thanks, Jamie. All right, so we do have lunch here for everyone. I'm guessing it's after 12 o'clock, so everyone's starting to get hungry and we don't want anyone to get hangry. But so we'll stick around. If anybody has questions for us, you can step out, grab lunch, bring it back and eat in here. I would close by reiterating what Josh said. I've been in home building about 20 years now. It's not rocket science. It is supply and demand. And we have this huge run up in 2021 because we didn't have enough supply to meet demand. Like Josh said, that is going to happen again. We don't know exactly when. My guess is in 2024, sometime next year. And so for all the reasons he's telling his friends and family, now is a great time to buy a home. I'm telling my friends and family the same thing. So we've got a lot of great neighborhoods. We've got a lot of great people on our team and would love to work with all of you to get some of your clients into some of our homes. So grab something to eat. We do have Josh's slides and we'll stick around if anybody has any questions for any of us. That's it. Thank you.